this mentor that I spend a lot of time showing him work. So I was showing him my latest landscape stuff, mountains, and I'm showing him a recent wedding, I think that I'd been at. And he said, I think the phrasing he used was, you're not going to be the next Ansel Adams. Like this stuff over here, this is nice, and you took a picture of a mountain. That's great. And it's even maybe technically correct, but this is different. And this is the part where you have something probably to add to the world that other people are not capable of doing.
Yeah. Shalom, friends. Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchak Muli, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends, and welcome to the Orange Socks podcast. And from great distances, I'm together here with Shmuel Robbins. Shmuel, welcome.
Thank you very much, Yitzchak. It's a pleasure to be here.
Technicals. It's not a way to let people know how we're starting off a podcast.
Correct. I forget if it's right or left brain, but for the artistic folk, it's the harder thing. As it happens in my day job, I'm actually a very, very technical guy. I managed to bring them both together for a merge.
Yeah, so that takes a fair amount of skill, and I love in-person podcasts because we can just be here. Then again, I also come up to my technical difficulties also. But technicals aside, well, the truth is that your form of expression does require a fair amount of technicals. So tell us a little about it.
That's a fair point. So I'm a photographer. As the stuff behind me testifies, the technicals of photography mask, especially nowadays, more and more every day. It masks what it really needs to be, like a specialist in AI generating something that's super cool that is potentially completely lacking in soul. So classical composition doesn't go away. Right. And rules of thirds don't go away. And Fibonacci spirals and golden ratios and like all this stuff are like still true. And people's minds find photography has a lot of the same kind of manipulation and illusion that a painting would. Like, so if I'm depicting a thing and I've got a woman and she's looking off into the distance, so you instantly become very interested in like, what is that lady looking at? Because you're following that line, and especially if you can depict that line, then you're doing good. So in my particular stuff, and we're going to get into it, I think, but I'm particularly interested in people. And I'd like to tell you later about my journey into interest from people, from landscapes and big icy shores.
Right.
It's still true, and it's just as the real challenge of depicting that well is not in the technicals. The challenge of depicting that well is in the intuition and timing and arrangement and distance and a small like you've got like 4 or 5 decisions to make in the technical realm that can make a really significant difference to how something looks.
Sure.
But then there's a lot of software, and there's really expensive cameras out in the world, and there's a lot that makes it seem like it's a very, very technical game. But really, at the end of the day, it comes down to soul and expression.
Yeah, that is very true. And with photography, and I began my creative pursuits with photography. That was my first love, if you will, and it definitely is. There's a certain learning curve, and it is about the technicals, but it's about mastering them in order to be able to manipulate them and to play with them. Yeah. And today, it's just different set of tools to manipulate and play with, perhaps. But yeah, the fundamentals are the same, and then it's what you do with it. Really, it's
the barriers to learning in. So I look at painting. My kids can paint better than I can, and I look at the basic stuff that they manage to pull off, and I just cannot fathom how they managed to get that texture out of what they were working with. And it seems like there's a lot of barriers to entry for all of these things. It seems mysterious. I'd argue that photography is probably much easier than in that sense than the
So,
stuff that you work with, because
but that
the numbers of variables are really actually lower. They're plasticky and metal, and they seem real unfriendly. But in the earlier days of photography, when things were not digital, and photography was bound to the dark room, the post processing, as they say, in post, was just as important as
oh
post is
yeah,
today. I happen to
oh
be a
yeah,
specialist in the kind of software that handles post, but the specialist whom could take a photograph back into a dark room and make darkening effects appear on the edges and bring out particular highlights or
dodge
dampen
and
particular
burn,
blacks and
dodge
all
and
that. Like I
burn.
have no idea, like no idea at all. There's so much. It's so nuanced. Also, it's very easy to mess up.
Have you spent
Um,
time in a dark room?
no, never.
Never.
No, never. And
Okay.
like most people, I'm in my 40s, but like most people of
Right.
my generation have never even seen a dark room.
So the
And
time,
yeah,
right, when I've spent time in a dark room, but it was in camp.
yeah,
And it was in camp, and it was actually an activity for the campers to. They gave them like really simple point and shoots, and then they came in and we did a whole thing, and we developed our own images. And I was good friends with the camp photographer, and yeah, he was shooting 35 millimeter black and white film, and that was how we documented camp and what's going on.
right.
Yeah, and a little, yeah, yeah, different world, completely different world.
Somebody who's looked at as the one of the fathers of modern art photography, fine art photography, Ansel Adams, who picked
Yes.
up a famous name even.
Yep.
So Ansel Adams uh, did lots and lots and lots and lots in post production. When he was shooting, he was thinking about legendarily. He was thinking about like, what am I going to be doing with this in post? I think
Yeah.
like that. When I'm working, I already am thinking. I think in black and white. Almost all my work is in black and white,
Okay.
and I'm already thinking about lights and darks and shadow and all of that. I think about it in terms of monochrome. There are purists in the world, and I guess I can relate only in as much as they're purists. But there's purists in the world who will very much poo-poo that kind of thing. They'll say if you didn't get exactly what it should have been like right out of the camera, then you're just not an artist. So there's somebody out there in the world who'll
Uh,
say such a thing. I don't relate. I think if the father of modern fine art photography can do it, then I can. If you've got to prepare your paints and make them just so, I don't see that. I don't think that makes you any less of a. I don't think that makes you more of a piker.
yeah,
It just makes you
that would
prepared.
that would almost. I mean, I hear and but that would be the same as saying, okay, like only what you can paint in one sitting is the painting. If you come back the next day and keep at it, then that's all post,
Right.
or whatever. And it's wonderful to set boundaries on yourself and give yourself creative constraints, because a lot of really amazing things do come out of creative constraints.
Yeah.
But to say, that's, yeah, listen, each to their own.
Well, you.
Ansel Adams, what I remember hearing is that he did one particular expedition, and he constrained himself to one exposure a day. And so that
I love
is,
it.
you know,
I love it. You're
it,
aware there's a real famous quote, and I think it's Orson Welles. It's attributed to Orson Welles who said it that something like I mess it up every time, but it's something like a lack of constraint is the enemy of good art. I think that's the quote,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
can go Google it.
yeah,
Someone will get that right
yeah.
for us. But and I love that quote. Actually, I considered opening up. I've opened up presentations on my work with that quote because I think that's exactly right. I think that with
Yeah.
a complete absence of constraint, then nothing is good, nothing is hard, nothing is interesting, nothing is rare, and I think that's like what ultimately expression like we have is. I think you're working in rarity. You're finding something which is really scarce or essential,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm putting my finger on something that maybe this is it's like a little bit of ego with every artist, but like I'm the one who unearthed this little treasure that I can show the world. and it's rare and it's essential and it's different and it's like it's worth saying. It's not just a smiley face. Anybody can make a smiley face. This is something different,
Right.
and you don't get that unless there's such a thing as constraint. Because if there was no constraints, then everybody could do that.
Right.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
one thing I heard lately, and it's really resonating with me, and I keep thinking about it, is I believe Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientist, and what he said is that in the sciences, everything's there, and it just needs to be discovered. And it's just a matter of time until it gets discovered. And if it's not you, it's the next guy. And if it wasn't, it will eventually be discovered. But with art, it doesn't exist until you bring it into existence.
I,
And
I
if you don't bring it into existence, it may never exist. So I don't think it's egotistical at all to say, yeah, I created this. This didn't exist, and now it does. And I think one of my pieces, have it here somewhere, the my Am Yisrael Chai, Am Star Chai, and it blew my mind that in the history of Am Yisrael Chai, nobody came up with Am Star Chai. It's so elemental, it's so basic, and it's kind of my gift to the Jewish people because I didn't copyright it, and people are copying it, and that's absolutely fine. But that it didn't exist, and yet here I am. Who am I? And how many years after Am Yisrael it came along, and yet, yeah. So what we each, so that definitely there are constraints, and
yeah. Yeah,
that
actually, I had
elevates
a,
us.
and I relate. I had an experience recently. Actually, I had a thought as you were talking a minute ago that I say in, I don't know how much religion you like to inject into these conversations, but in Shemona Esrei we say Matzmiach Yeshua. So I've always had in mind that the Yeshua has to be present in order for it to sprout. Matzmiach Yeshua, that like you would have had to have had
So
something there in the first place. So like,
anything that you say in Hebrews, it needs to be translated for a
yeah,
wider audience.
yeah.
So go
So
ahead, explain yourself.
exactly. So we say in prayers 3 times a day, Jews do that we are praying to God that He sprouts salvation. That's one of the phrases in there, and I oftentimes have in mind when I'm saying that phrase that in order for that to be so, it would actually have to be present now. There's like an it's not that I'm needing something new to come to me. It's already here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of my art is like that too. That's one of the things that actually I love about photography too, to bring it back in that direction. I like that it's all the materials are around me. Everything I need to make something beautiful is in the world itself. I had an experience recently that was so common, so sort of common. I was likewise, I was kind of mind blown by the whole thing that my kid wanted to go have a catch. We went to a park and were now that in the first place, by the way, for anybody with boys out there, that seems like a common thing. But like, how really in your whole life, how many catches with your kid are you going to get? So like, yeah. So
Yeah.
in the first place, that's really not is not as common as we all think, and
Think it
everyone knows
is.
that,
Yeah.
right? So we have a catch, and it was really hot, and he ran out of gas, and he wants to lie down under a tree, and there's perfect clouds for cloud watching. So I lay down next to my kid with my glove under my head, and we're finding shapes in clouds. So again, that would be the kind of thing it's so common, it's so elemental. Like how many times in your whole life are you going to do that with your kids? Like in television land, it's the kind of thing you might do every day, and in real life, maybe twice. Something
Right.
like that.
Right.
It's a rarer than rare kind of. It's a quintessential kind of experience. And we're looking at these clouds, and he's like, "See that one? See that one?" And I'm answering him because I can see him too. And I had a thought lying there that there's something about this that's like the very first stirrings of creativity. These are like the very, very first stirrings of a creative impulse that like everybody can relate to and that nobody does that like people don't do anymore. You like go beyond it. But like once you're there and you're
Right.
lying there with the kid, just the 1 or 2 times you get in your whole life. It's the purest. I got out my camera because who am I to let
Because you do.
family time spoil art, right? So I got out my camera and I took a series of these pictures and I added just like an eyeball to them all, just so you could have like an anchor point to see like what am I seeing? Because that too
Right.
seemed rare and essential. I'm able to like share with you this kind of this thing that everybody can relate to, but nobody can quite name, and it's fleeting, right? Those
Right.
clouds are gone like in a second.
Right.
I loved it. That was, it's not probably, I don't know if it's the most profound work I've ever done, but I've still been looking at them and just getting
It's
tremendous pleasure out of them.
it sounds like it, and it may just be profound work because you gave it that profundity, and but from your son's perspective, it's wonderful that you're encouraging his creativity and his what he sees in those clouds up there, and yeah, that you're elevating his opinion, you recognize his opinion, and it's of equal value as your opinion. And of course, I'm sure you get this question, but I get the question, well, my kids really get the question is, so what arts, are you kids artists? What do you kids do? And they're all on their own, they're all creative in their own rights, but they all know that they all have the opportunity to critique my work. Say, Tyler, what do you think if we did this? If you did it like that, would it look better if that? What about that? Why you do like? And they all do, and they all know that their opinion is completely. I very much value their opinion. I very much want to hear, and some of them will like, oh man, I didn't think of it like that. I'm like, okay, like that's either scrap it or build it or change it or start again, whatever it is, because, and so where my children go creatively, we'll see. They got a lot of time ahead of them,
Yeah.
but that they know that they're creative and they know that they have a creative voice and they know that they have an opinion and they know that their opinion is valuable, and all of that I think is starts by lying on the floor and looking up at clouds with your son.
And it does. And I don't know how convenient your studio is to to the kids, but I'm like I do a lot of my work sitting right where you see me now. And
Right.
so my print work, my print shop is downstairs. And so I'm doing work all over the house. My work is all over the house. And so my kids will sit and talk through it all the time. And then as magazines roll through the house, they become hypercritical of the ads. They say
Okay.
they say the
Good.
light is all wrong
All
here,
right. Good.
and like if they wanted to make you happy, but they used a cool color. That was a mistake. And like, why are they using a palette that's evocative of such and such? That seems also like a mistake. And they think about this stuff on their own. And I attribute some of it to me and listening to me talk, but they continue to take it. They take it in their own directions and continue to develop all these ideas. They all particularly my older kids, have real distinct opinions about art in general, and I like it a lot. I like that they've developed that eye, and I like hearing it talked about in my home. It makes me happy.
Yeah. Developing an eye is so elemental. It's so basic,
Yeah,
and I forget someone Lewis maybe said that what is it as an artist is that you start off and you develop an eye and you see really cool things and you want to emulate it and you want to create your own art, and there's this gap between what you see and what you like and where you are, or the way you see where your art should be, and it's bridging that gap. It's keep on trying and trying and trying, not giving up in the meantime, that develops artists. So your kid's got time, but
yeah,
developing an eye that's step one.
it is. I think what we were talking about before about classical and like Enlightenment era kind of art technique is so fundamental to the way our minds work in the first place. I don't think it's just a thing of conditioning, because you can see those things replicated all over the world in different ways. And I think that's for me, it's a big part of my the way I relate to the world in general. It makes me happy that my kids also can relate to the world that way, because it's part of seeing beauty in the world. Like it's beauty is an ineffable thing. Beauty is a hard to quantify thing, but oftentimes when we talk about like it's a perfect moment, this looks a perfect way. We're actually describing kind of a thing. You're describing just where the light is and just where the dark is and just how the colors modulate and just how things symmetrically move forward into vanishing lines, and that looks like perfection to us because it is. It tickles our minds,
Right.
and having that means that I can get on a river in a kayak and float for get on a trail or go out to downtown, and the whole world's art. the whole
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
the whole world's
Yeah.
beautiful, and
Yeah.
I can find it everywhere. And it's a good feeling.
For sure.
You know,
For sure.
there's
For sure.
a picture I had here. I had a couple of things. I had a couple of things laying around that I was going to show you and your audience. Not a particularly Jewish one, but it's on the conversation. So in having an eye, so part of it is intuition. Part of it is experience and intuition and learning where in the context of photography, because I'm oftentimes only going to get a moment. So I'm oftentimes thinking well ahead about where are these things likely to come together for me.
Sure.
I imagine a process for you would be different, but that's a big part of what it means to have an eye in photography. It means forming something. In my opinion, if I had to explain it, I'd say it has to do with forming an intuition that's going to put you in the right place at the right time to put
Right.
all of that stuff together.
Yeah.
So I know where that kid on the bike is going to be at a particular moment.
Follow that arc. Yep.
That's right. And I'm going to follow his arc, and I'm going to position myself at a particular angle, and I bet I know what he's going to do with his hands, which is going to probably fill a frame for me, and I bet I'm going to be able to create an effective thirds with it, and I'm trying to think about that ahead of time.
Along those lines, what that, as you said, following the arc is, not that long ago, there was a full solar eclipse. And of course, every photographer worth his salt was out. Her salt was out there, capturing. And there are more than the stunning ones of the close-ups and the details. But then, there's some really interesting photographers that put themselves in position in downtown, so that like there was, I think I remember it was in Boston. There was like a statue, I don't know who, was like pointing, and they position themselves, and the eclipse is right there at the end of the finger. So we all have the same eclipse. That eclipse came through, and everyone had the same opportunity to capture it, who wanted to capture it. But then there was some, and then everyone who did, it was a reflection on their worldview, it was a reflection on their perspective and the way they saw it and the way they use this to and it's all different and it's all interesting, and developing an eye, being able to say, well, everyone's going to see it, it's still coming through, how can I bring my own unique flair to this?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I had an important mentorship moment. I had an important mentorship moment a number of years ago that led me into I mostly focus on people, and I mostly focus on Jewish themes, and I remember I have a mentor. His name is Tom. So my kids call him Rabbeinu Tom after of course after the 11th century scholar, and so this mentor that I spend a lot of time showing him work. So I was showing him my latest landscape stuff, mountains. And I'm showing him a recent wedding, I think, that I'd been at. And he said, I think the phrasing he used was, you're not going to be the next Ansel Adams. Like, this stuff over here, this is nice, and you took a picture of a mountain. That's great. And it's even maybe technically correct, but this is different. And this is the part where you have something probably to add to the world that other people are not capable of doing.
Yes.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח